All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. This is Rob here at Smirking Gun. And you saw the thumbnail. You might have gone, what? If you're a big, long time member of the channel, might remember that a long time ago, years now, watched a little show called The Terror. And there was a next season called The Terror Infamy. I loved the first season of The Terror. I love it. I still love it. I think it's great. I really I put it up there with the North Water, another show about being trapped up in the northern part of the world, and it dealt with kind of the current technology facing the old legends and things that are being pushed out as new things come. It's kind of the story of the terror a little bit. It's a historical drama with some supernatural elements, but again, in like all things, it's really about how people react to things and how we deal with things and the choices that we make. The terror infamy I was supposed to talk about like so long ago. I was so super excited, but for whatever reason, I could give you I could give you 10 excuses and they'd all be like part of the reason why I didn't. But I think mostly it's just because so many, like back then, I was just always like a new thing, a new thing, a new thing. And you just start covering things and then you forget. And so after a while, you keep saying, oh, someday I'm going to watch this and talk about it when I have time. But that time never came, and more excuses and blah, 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 blah. So I've never even seen an episode of the show until yesterday. And I said, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to watch the first episode, I'm going to take some notes and see if there's anything here. And oh boy, is there. For me, at least. I thought that this was an excellent show to talk about. And I could say things like, oh, this is just as relevant as ever. But our society doesn't really, as many ways that we change technologically as people, we still have miles and miles and miles to go as far as like where we really should be as people, in my opinion. And so when somebody says, oh, this story about, you know, racism and other things is relevant, it's always relevant because we do it every decade. Let's call it every decade. Every day, though, there's a group out there that's being oppressed for one reason or another in this country. Forget about the rest of the world, right? Because it's happening everywhere. But let's focus on what we do here, or what we did and do as Americans, because a lot of people that push against critical race theory, which I hate that term, it's just learning our history, not forgetting it and not trying to change it to fit your narrative, so that like they say, oh, I don't want our kids to learn about all the things we did, or grandparents or great grandparents, because when I tell stories about Peepaw, I don't want them to know that he was a raging racist. He saved America. But that's not, it's really our own guilt. We can't face our own guilt, the people that feel this way. So they condemn it because they don't want to be reminded of how crappy some of their relatives acted, or themselves. Because, before, the orange faced clown got in our lives for real, where we couldn't just turn him off on the TV, I mean, you still could, but he'd be there. You knew he was there. A lot of the racism around me, I didn't even realize existed. And I grew up in a small town. I live in a small town in Illinois. And when I was a kid, up till like age 12 or so, and then even coming back occasionally, I never saw my area as being racist. And then that happened. And then all of these people just started, oh, it's okay to talk like this now. It's okay to openly talk about my disgust for people that aren't white. Now, there also isn't a really big contingency of outside races around here. There's a pretty good contingency of Latinos, but there's not a lot of black or Asian persuasion around here. Those that are like, and that's not to say that not like a 15 minutes away in DeKalb, Illinois, where there's a college, there's plenty. There's a lot. And believe me, when you're sitting in the right, when you're in the right place or the wrong place, really, people will let their feelings know about how they feel about having as many black people around as there are here. Of course, again, they still wait to look around, like in that Key and Peele speech when they say, "Bitch." Most of the time, they still look around to make sure nobody's going to hear them say something. Cowards. And I know that, like, here we are going, and it's 6 minutes in, and we barely talked about it. But this is what happens when I start talking about something that brings up all these feelings, because the terror infamy deals with the Japanese Americans that were put in internment camps. We like to use all these like other fancy words. Concentration camps. We didn't have gas chambers. We had camps, places to put people that we didn't think we could trust. People that were born here, that have businesses here, because of Pearl Harbor and World War II, people just got lined up, put on buses, said they were going to talk to the FBI, all sorts of things. And it's just another one of the great shames that's happened in this country, and it was less than 100 fucking years ago. By the time we hit the 100-year mark, well, it's 17 years from now. It would be 100 years since this happened. But when I was a kid, right, like let's say when I was born in 1975, we're talking less than 40 years since that happened. And I didn't know about it. I believe I was taught it in high school, but it wasn't, it wasn't a big talking point. And it's just another one of those things that you think, how can we not know this? How can we forget about this? It's because of, people pushing these topics away. And again, so much of it has to do with their own guilt. Except you didn't do it. It's like these ignorant people think that you're gonna, my kid's gonna hate himself for being white if he knows that other white people did bad things. It's like, no, man. It just means that he has these kids have a better perspective on what happened in their country and how we can maybe do it better. But they don't want the real thing is they just don't want. They'll tell themselves, like, in the end, I think it puts their kids at a disadvantage. And it just shows what is really, truly important at the heart and soul of most people. Let's call it most people, not just white people, because racism comes in every color, shape, and form. I mean, somebody in the comment section could say, well, the Japanese people, what they did to Koreans and what they've done to this, that, and the other. And it's like, yes, that's the thing. We've all done these terrible things. And it seems like everybody, depending on what side you're on, wants you to forget about it. But this isn't a story about what somebody did to somebody else in some other country. We're talking about what somebody did to some people here in our country. And if anybody across the world, watches this or hears this, you can also take lessons within your own countries and how we talk and deal with each other. And how just because you've had it rough and somebody else is succeeding, your failure doesn't mean that their success is something that you should be angry at. But that's kind of what happens here in this first episode in the form of one person. And that, I think, in a show this dense, because this is a dense show, like for 51 minutes, I felt like I was watching it for 2 hours. But that's how it kind of felt with the original Terror. And there's not a lot of places to go in when you're on a boat trapped in the ice. So much depends on the dialogue. And so much depends on the dialogue here, but at least they get to walk around, even though eventually the camp will end up being their ship, like trapped, and something is trying to kill you, because there's also the supernatural element to this show that deals with spirits from their home, and and now something is here, followed them across the oceans. And it's kind of like, the older generation talking about it to the younger generation, and some of them taking it seriously, like, you really better be look out for the spirits, and some of them talking about it more like, you know we understand that these are our old customs, and we're trying to be American, so we're leaving all that behind. But it's like, you can leave your one of the things I think it's saying is, like, you can leave your culture behind, but your culture will follow you, I guess. Like, in the spiritual realm, like, if you want to look at it like that, I think there's some of that, like a curse following you. And I haven't fully formed an opinion on, like, why these spirits that are in this show followed them. I'm looking for, like, some kind of lesson or whatnot. Some of it might even have to do with them even coming to America. Like, are they being punished or warned about what's going, what could befall them here, or is it protecting them, or what? What is this benevolent force really after? And that's the first thing that I don't like. The big thing I don't know. Like, I know about, like, I've seen something. There's a lot of things that happen in this that are really creepy. And the beginning scene is legit scary. Like, as far as, like, one of the things you're just like, oh, no, 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 oh. And as I've talked about this, this is how it goes too. Like, this is like and subscribe, folks, if you like what we're doing here on the channel, where we talk about these things in deep dives. It's like 6 o'clock in the morning, because it's one of the only times where I feel like I can do this these days. It's whenever I'm confident enough to, like, let myself record. It's a long story. It's got to do with privacy mostly, but I don't know how. This is a test, all right? Not for how many people, like, that watch this, but how I feel after I, like, talk about this. Do I want to continue? Right now, I do want to continue. It'll probably just be once a week, kind of like we did with The Man in the High Castle. Maybe twice a week. I don't know. However long it takes to get through it, I'm determined to get through it, as long as there's something to talk about. So this discussion is mostly going to be spoilery for people who have watched this show, or people who are just interested in the topic and the things that I end up discussing as part of it. So we are going to just get right in and start talking about this and see where it goes. So we're talking about the Terror Infamy. This is episode 1. It's called A Sparrow in a Swallow's Nest. The first thing I want to talk about, let's see, is our director for this episode is Joseph Kubota Waladka. Man, that's a hard name to say. I always seem to pick things with really hard names to say, at least for an American. He's done a lot of stuff. The thing he's done the most is Narcos. He's done a lot of good television, though. He directed 2 episodes of The Terror. The writers are Max Borenstein, Alexander Wu, and Naomi Lizuka. And another thing I love about this is the cast. What I love about it is, and also it gives me something to aspire to, is, like, I know almost no one in this cast. I love not knowing a cast. I know, like, it gives you a chance to find new people that are amazing in this media. And I feel really bad, and it's like, I thought, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look up these people. I'm going to start going through their IMDb's. I'm going to find a bunch of stuff that I've like, oh, I should have seen them in this, that, and the other. But the thing is I haven't, for the most part. Like, there's a guy, like, the main character, I think, was in an episode of House. All right, there's a lot of episodes of House, and if they're only in one episode, they better stand out. But that's the thing, So I'm really excited to, like, get to know these actors that I don't know, because, again, they're in things that I just haven't seen, or from one of the things I've been trying to do is branch out and not just look at, like, as like when I play video games, I try to play as the female protagonist, mostly because I've been playing as a man like my whole life, and now that these, in the last 10 or 15 years or so, when you get the option to play as other characters or create your own, like a lot of times I'll pick a female character because they just want to see a different perspective. Because a lot of times they do put the effort in for a voice actor and a different kind of tone, especially like if you look at games like Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Um, and the only person in this cast that I really know is George Takei. And I mean, I only know George Takei, I should say, um, because of Star Trek. And and so I'm like, well, and there's a guy named Teach Grant, but he's one of those guys I think you recognize because he probably plays a lot of bad guys. He's just one of those white people that gets like, you're gonna be this guy. And Christina Rodlow was in a show called Too Old to Die Young, which is from Nicholas Winding Refn, and I didn't really like that show at the time, so I kind of put it out of my head, but I did recognize her. But the main cast here is Derek Mio, Kiki Sukazane, Christina Rodlow, Shingo Usami, Naoko Mori, Miki Ishikawa, George Takei, Hira Ambrosino, Eiji Inoue, James Saito, Teach Grant, Riley Dolman, Lee Shorten, Alex Shimizu, Yuki Morita, and Yuta Takanaka, Peter Kawasaki, and Matthew Yanagiya. Those are the list of main character actors, at least on IMDb. The main actors, I started from like the biggest, the first main character name, who's Derek Mio, who plays Chester Nakayama. We'll be following mostly him, Christina Rodlow, and some of his family members, George Takei. There's a lot of the people that are in this that we follow. And it takes place in San Pedro, at least the beginning of this episode, takes place in San Pedro, California in 1941, where there's a community of Japanese people, some that, the older generation who came from Japan and are now raising Japanese Americans, the first generation of Japanese born here in America. And what I've known from history, is that people have come here for centuries now looking for a better life, still do. Even though when you think about it, like these days, people, how bad is it in somebody else's country that they think coming here is the answer? And I don't mean that like, when somebody's like saying, you took our jobs, that kind of thing. It's more like, hey, are you sure you want to come here? Because, oh, that's what's happening in your country? Well, I guess you got to go somewhere. And if coming here is less horrible than where you live, then that is saying something. But we've always been a melting pot until we decide we don't want to. Until somebody else is coming in and we think they're gonna take over. That fear that everybody, each group has too. It's like the brother picking on the little brother, except with more malice and more ignorance. That kind of thing. Where it's like the natives, we come here, we take it from the Indian, the native indigenous tribes that lived here before us, and then subsequently anybody else that comes after the next person is always the one that's shit on and taken down. We can't let those Italians in, we can't let the Irish in, we can't let the blacks in, we can't let the Latinos in, we can't let the Asians in, we can't, we're gonna get taken over. All because somebody else's idea of like coming here and starting something is going to, like, it's that dog eat dog mentality to make us fight each other over the scraps at the table, because even back then the game was fixed. Even back then, if you didn't have nothing, you probably weren't going to have much, and if you did get something, People nowadays would say if you've got this much money, you probably did something terrible to get it. It's like hard work, no, or nepotism. Nepotism is a big thing. But we start off this is pretty, modestly. It's a fishing town, working next to, the Americans. They're all Americans technically. Some of them might not be full blown citizens. Um, and that'll be another thing. Well, you came here right wise, and you got your this and that, and you learned the language, and blah blah blah. And it's like people forget that, like, their relatives that came here, they didn't speak a lick either, and some of them still don't. There are people walking around here where I live that just they never bothered, and and they come from all over, not just like there's a lot of Italians that don't speak American. There's Polish. There's a couple of Swedish people here that near me that just he this guy never bothered to give a shit about learning American. But I don't care. I don't care. Whatever you feel comfortable with, however you feel like comfortable communicating, go ahead. You might have a little difficulty, but I'll try. I'll try to hear you out. I'll try to like figure out what you're saying. I don't care. I mean, I think the only time it would be like really difficult is like if you're in a really dire situation, say you're in a car accident or something, and the first thing you hear is somebody that can't speak English to you, and you're like, oh shit. But hey, it could happen vice versa too. But like I said, San Pedro, California, little fishing town, and the way that this starts out, it's like the calm before the storm, where we start to get to know all our characters, what their drama is, and then the mystery that is starts to quickly, to me, much quicker than in the Terror. Um, but I think that that's by design, and the setting of that show being on a boat, and this is in a place that you can walk around and leave and la la la. It can go anywhere, even though it's still like a microcosm in. I'm just saying there's more places to go than the boat and like 50 yards from the boat. And on the surface, it seems like everything is fine. That these people have all like struggled to come here, struggled to make it, still struggling. There's the guy that's the father of our main character. You find out like he took him 20 years to get a Packard. He's one of only 6 people that has like a car on their island, which is a theme in this of leaving one island for another island and then never leaving. A lot of this also has to do with generational stuff of the old, like the different cultures, right? I can speak to American culture, which a lot of our cultures are kind of similar. It's how we handle them that's different. So say like there's something in this about somebody who has sex outside of marriage, outside of your race, which is another taboo thing that comes up in here, is race mixing. How the younger generation just wants to be happy and be able to be with whoever they want to be with, whatever race they are. It's considered shame by all sides of the older generation to do it. And there's so much of that in here that it's the one of the things that like not just Americans have things that they've got to work through as far as like culturally accepting other people, and having such rigid beliefs, for whatever reason, keeping their bloodline, I guess, or their heritage pure from having what I guess they would call tainted like genetics then if you like have a kid or with an American or somebody else. And that comes from like we don't want to pass down like what they have, like how they look at us. Okay, for those of you that are listening, there's been some difficulties getting this video recorded. I've run into I ran into like kind of a mental block. Then I ran into some privacy issues where I've been trying to record this thing all day. To the point where I'm like, man, I hope I remember to talk about everything. But another thing is like, I'm talking about things. I'm listening to going over the old recording already to like see what I've already talked about. And it's like, man, okay, let's get to it because I'm talking about all the things that I'm like, well, remember I talked about that earlier. It's like I need to be talking about this when we're talking about the scene, but I get so like hyped up to talk about the different topics that are floating in my head after watching it that I don't want to have to go over it again. So again, I'm rusty, but this is kind of how it goes anyway. So we're talking about the different ways of things being culturally, how we need to be with each other. But it's time to just fully just get into the show and talk about what happened in it. Okay, we get it. The internment camp stuff, everything's terrible. It's hard to live here for these people, and the younger generation is looking to step out, except unfortunately, this is all about to go down at the beginning of World War II. So, A Sparrow in a Swallow's Nest, though, is a very interesting title. And I did some looking up for this too. Basically being like when it comes up later with a character and we'll discuss it then. How about that? But again, one of the things I love about this show already is the mystery. The mystery that I didn't like. I knew going into the season 1 roughly what the plot was. It doesn't really need that much more to say. These guys go up on an expedition. They get trapped in the ice. It's a human, like what that does to a person when you're trapped out there as a group. What does that do? And then something supernatural is out there stalking you. But it was the character work that I didn't know. And same here, except I don't know. I didn't know anything about this other than the basic of internment camp, supernatural thing. That's it. And so going into this one with almost no like idea where it's going. The mystery in this to me is because I don't have those details or know as much. Again, I don't know as much about what happened during this time period for the Japanese that were interred. So this is like an education. And I love watching stuff that even if it's fictionalized, gives me some kind of feeling for what it must have been like. And so at the very beginning of this show, like it starts out like just a woman, putting on like makeup. She like, I don't understand all this. So if I'm wrong, but it looked like she was kind of dressing up like, I know that there's different terms, but she was making herself up all pretty, hair up, makeup on, very nice kimono. Looks like she's getting ready to go somewhere, do something. And the first thing I noticed in this scene was just the way she looked in the mirror. It felt off then, but I didn't notice until I rewound. Okay, I kind of watched this as it just was happening, like, oh, okay, accepting everything that's happening at face value, going, okay. She's going out and she walks, okay, because again, this is for people who have seen this. So, like, if you haven't seen the show, turn it off, go watch this, at least this episode, and then come back and listen to this. She's going out onto the pier of the fishing, one of the piers out there in this town. Suddenly, her neck shifts weird, and it makes the weird crack. And then her feet crack. And it's like something as soon as suddenly has taken her over. It's the telltale signs if you've watched enough possession, things about possession or anything that involves possession of people by ghosts or demons or spirits. You know exactly what that crack means when you hear it. When somebody's neck moves that way and then suddenly you hear that. So this person has clearly been taken over to the point where they end up collapsing on the ground as if they are no longer in control of their body. It might have even been a struggle. And it is why maybe they collapsed. Is that in the struggle to take over, the person when they lost basically threw everything they could at it, but couldn't beat its spirits. Immediately, you just see the person sitting very calmly, looking out over the water. And I'm just going, something really bad's about to happen, and it does. I just didn't know for what form it was going to take. How was this person going to perish? Was this person going to perish? It just felt ominous as fuck. And it removes one of the items from her hair, the little. I swear, it's like I need a new. I needed to do get like a dictionary of, or read a book on everything Japanese culture and just have it downloaded into my brain. The little like picks that she puts in her hair to hold it up. She takes it out, the sharp needle looking thing. And you just go, oh God, where are they putting it? Where are they putting it? Like, I nowhere was going to be good. But it's just that tension before, and and how much are they going to show? Are they going to cut away? And they show her from the front, stick this thing in her ear, and she starts making, very concerned noises, like as if something is happening to her and she has no control over it, except we can hear her pain as she drives this into her head. And they show it. And it's hard to watch. And it's terrifying. And she just goes down as soon as pop. Why did this person die? Why did this spirit? That's the question that you're asking at the beginning of this show, is why did this happen to this person? What did this spirit want with her? What did this person do to her? What's the crime? Because it has to have some kind of purpose, right? Even, whenever they talk about like ghosts and spirits and their other business and things like that, depending on if they're, like demons or whatnot. Are they malevolent spirits or are they just run of the mill? I'm going to haunt my ex-wife for the rest of my life, that kind of thing. But it was a hell of a way to start, especially because it was so quiet and beautiful and picturesque, and then just terror flips on a dime. And the next day we have these people, they're all gathering for the funeral. And our main character, Chester, he's looking down, he's fumbling he's got this like loose string at his sleeve. And as he starts pulling it, you're like, okay, this is either comical or something really bad's about to happen. Oh shit. All of a sudden it's like razor wire around his wrist, and it's like a gaping wound of flesh, like it's being like pulled up, like his like wrist has got like over an inch of exposed flesh, as if this has been cutting into him forever. And he's just seeing some crazy shit and he snaps out of it. It's like, holy shit. Man, we're like barely started in this show, and they are not wasting time with the spirits and the supernatural affecting the psyche of people, literally and figuratively. Or is it already just infecting him? And he has this, like, he remembers the woman who died on the pier. This is her funeral, and he's there to give, pay respects. And he remembers something. We get to see a memory of him and her as she's making something for him. There's been a terrible mistake, and she is going to fix it for him. And he's thinking to himself, basically, I think, did me doing this get her killed somehow? He doesn't, he's just remembering her, that last memory. And we find out he didn't get what she said she was going to make for him. Her husband gives it to him in these two like beakers or vials, and he calls him a coward. So what did they do? What is this mistake? What are these vials for? And they've got the body out in a coffin as they're getting ready to take it to be buried, I assume. And suddenly there's this huge gust of wind, huge, that knocks the casket, flips the casket over, flips the body out, rolling over, ass over tea kettle. And they're immediately talking about like this is bad omens, man. This is bad juju. Like a spirit, like they're already talking. Could this be spirits from Japan? And they're like, what? So far away? Like we've gotten away from all that. Like this is America. Don't worry about all that stuff. But what is all this? What is causing this to happen now? Is it a warning? Is it a threat? What did these people do? Or what did she do? Because more people die. That's, it's, only one person dies in this whole show called The Terror. But again, this show isn't wasting any time with putting out the spooks. And this is where we meet George Takei's character, who is in his first conversations talking about how he's the tuna boxing champion of San Pedro. And he tells a really nice story, a really funny story of how a big tuna got on the boat and was standing so big that it was standing upright. He punched it in the face. But it's also where he talks about the bakemono, which is literally, I think, means the thing that changes, a shapeshifter. So we're into that. Now, there's all kinds of cultures have shape-shifting in it. It's kind of funny though, like other cultures have things, but I look at like what do like white, just like white culture in America. What are our legends? We don't have any. We don't have any, man. Everything that we believed in that was scary came from our great grandparents, from when they told us whatever shit was going on in Europe, like, the Grimm's fairy tale stuff. But like when you think about what do we have here? We just get scared about a bunch of other shit that we hear about. We got movies. We get scared. Like if you look at like the movies we make, like what we're scared of each other. That's what we're scared of. We're scared of each other. We don't need like spirits and ghosts and shit. We got our next door neighbors to worry about. Or the black family that moved in down the street. Oh God. But I like that in The Terror, you bring up this kind of stuff and they're going to be like, they'll bring the fire and brimstone, power of the Lord kind of stuff down on you. But this is part of Japanese culture, ghosts and spirits. This is, stuff that they've been, it's been passed down for centuries, this stuff. So it's part of their culture to talk about it. Even if it is like, to like, I guess, some people talking about Thor or Zeus. Then we find out that the terrible thing that poor Chester did was he had sex. He had sex with somebody. She's Latino. And they appear to be, in a memory being very happy, but it turns out he knocked her up. and that the ampules that they have are for a homemade abortion. So already you've got like varying degrees of racism on the docks, where you can tell that the guy that they sell mackerel to and stuff is ripping them off, that he's, tolerating them, but keeps bringing up the things that are wrong with his life, but surely seeing how well they're doing. And then you have the cultural stuff from the different generations pushing against each other about, staying like, trying to be as American as possible so that you just get left alone and don't shine too bright and don't brag about what you have, which honestly, I mean, I don't think anybody should. I think it's pretty gauche to like fucking purposely flash your shit around like you're better than other people, like, but I think it's better to be humble at least, and at least, or if you're gonna flash it, man, share the wealth, I guess, a little bit. Uh, I don't know, but before I lose my train of thought, and then we have the race mixing, where it's just wrong on all sides. I mean, imagine if she was white, it'd even be worse. Like, I can see the storylines already coming. But like this is already like to their cultures, like mixing of Asian and Latino is frowned upon. It doesn't matter if it's white or black or whatever. No mixing. This is 1940s Civil War movement. Hasn't even really like gotten into full swing here. And not only did they race mix to to their culture, but she's pregnant. They're college aged. They want to start their lives, and she doesn't want this to ruin her life. She wants to be able to do what she wants to do and go do her thing. And he wants to be able to go off and do his thing. They got together, they had a good time, and then this is the end result. Except now she's upset, he's upset, and she's basically telling him, how she likes the idea, like how you can like the idea of something, how it sounds, but not the thing itself. That you can go off and do all these things. We have all these great ideas or dreams or whatnot, but then there's reality. There's what, but also kind of saying it like, if you don't want a kid, man, don't bring a kid into this world. That's how I feel. I feel like that's kind of what she's saying, but you can also tell that she's really conflicted. But that also probably has to come down to her own conditioning, her own indoctrination from whatever she's been told her whole life from her parents and her friends and her social group and people that she just meets and sees every day. We're informed by our environments, not just what we're always, we put in our own heads. But we get Henry. His name is Henry, and it's Chester's dad. And he's trying to go in because Chester stands up to Mr. I want to call him Stan Gritch. Where's his name? I wrote it down. Stan Gritchuk, the guy that's at the fish plant. And he tells this guy off, like, you should be paying my father 40 a pound. And they kind of put him in his place for the moment where looks like he might have to pay up. But then when the father goes in there to negotiate, the guy not only takes him back down to the original offer, he starts lowering it again. All this, look at this. And I do like that the guy, he's like hiding his racism, which is funny. But I mean, the writing of how they decided to approach this, of like, this is what the guy is going to do to appear that he's not being a shitty person, by taking him into the factory and being like, look at this. This is why I can't pay you the 40, because look at your fish. They're all this and that and the other. Like, there's an excuse for this guy no matter what. Like, he tells them because it's going to cost a certain amount of money to get the crappy fish, as he thinks, like squid and stuff mixed in with the mackerel. I got to pay the people to get rid of that. So even though they say we'll do all the work, we'll separate all the stuff you don't want, so all you get is the mackerel, and you don't have to pay those people, and you can pay us the 40 a pound. So even though he's like, okay, you got me, when he shows up, now he's got another excuse, and he knows the son isn't there to back him up, because he also knows that Henry is the kind of guy who he can bully, because he knows the score. He knows the score, and he knows Henry knows the score. And the sad thing is they both are like, the one guy, they probably don't really have anything against each other, except the one guy is white and the other guy isn't. But then something happens that you could say is supernatural, or you could say it's just shoddy, dopey. They put warning signs around factory stuff for a reason, because of shit like this that goes down, where the guy gets trapped in his own machine. And all I'm thinking is, as a horrible person, this is the moment for this guy to go, don't help him. But Henry, being a decent person, he goes and he helps him, and you can immediately tell that not only does this guy, you just saved this guy's life, but now you make him feel, in his small-mindedness, that now he's been rescued by someone he can't stand to see do well, and now he just feels even more humiliated as a man, because of all the reasons that men are made to feel small by their fathers and their great grandfathers. These people weren't made overnight. The attitude that these kind of guys have, doesn't just happen. And even though you can say that the side of humanity is to basically, dog eat dog, like the Cain and Abel kind of thing. If somebody else has it, there's going to be somebody who wants to take it from them, and that if somebody is not doing as well as you, they're gonna they have this attitude of like, why not me, and blah blah blah. And it does happen, and it's so fucked up. It's happening everywhere still. But he saves the guy, and you just know it. He just hauls off, and something's gonna happen with this later. And so yeah. Well, first, there's this blurry image photo. Henry is like dabbles in photography, apparently. He was taking pictures at the funeral. He finds a picture of somebody that is weird and blurry, like it shouldn't be. Like there's no reason, like everything else in the picture is normal except for this one image of a person. But suddenly, at nighttime, there's a loud bang on the door, and I was like, oh shit, it's going down. I thought this is the internment camp stuff, like all of a sudden, bam. But no, it's just drunk-ass Stan Gritchick saying he got fired because of the machinery malfunction. And guess who he's there to blame? Telling him that I can just turn you in, because there's posters everywhere about see something, say something. Gee, wonder, like we just recently were using that all the time. In fact, I think it still is a saying that's been made popular in the last 20-ish so years. Well, this guy decides to use that to threaten him with, I could just tell anybody that you're a spy and you lose everything. But instead, he just wants his Packard, something that he worked 20 years for. He said it took him 20 years to get a car like that. And this man just comes and threatens him with being a spy so he can steal it and have his car and probably just sell it because he'll need money with no job. And then he goes, thanks for saving my life, by the way. There's a lot of the father versus the son moments in this section, because the son just can't stand to watch his father be bullied by someone. Meanwhile, the father's just trying to tell him, that the way your way of doing it is just going to cause things to be worse. But if you never fight back, what did you even leave Japan for in the first place if you just left one tyranny for another tyranny? But the father-son dynamic also of the you can't tell me, I'm your father, I've done this and I've made my choices and these were hard things for me to do, and how dare you, like you haven't lived so you don't know. You haven't been forced to make these choices yet. So even like both of them have things to say that have points, but it's better to die on one's feet than live on one's knees. And that's just my own take on it. Rejecting. So we suddenly shift over to the husband and kid of the woman who was killed. The woman who I guess would be considered like, I don't know, like a doctor, I guess, but she puts together poultices, like a herbal pharmaceutical, an herbal pharmacist. I don't know all the terms for all this stuff. So if anybody that watches this wants to give me an education, as long as you can keep from being snarky at me and just recognize that I'm searching for knowledge, put that in the comment section. But his wife is dead, and somebody from the funeral is there, and she's putting down these little, like, looks like rice along the windowsills, and she's chanting, and the husband's like, "What are you doing? Get out of my house." Like when he realizes that she's there to because she calls where they live a haunted house now that she's dead and what happened and everything. But he rejects the purification of his house. And the guy leaves, and suddenly he's possessed. The husband of the woman who just died. He's possessed, and he's forced to stare at the sun without being able to move. But again, just like his wife, he is frozen in the moment, except for he can feel the pain. He knows what's happening to him. He just can't control it. You can see what it does to him in a greater fashion as it takes him over. But you wouldn't, whenever they say don't stare at the sun, believe it if you watch this. Now I can't speak to how accurate what happens. I don't know how long you'd have to stare at it to have what happens to him happen, but he essentially burns out his whole fucking eyeballs so that you don't even there's eyes there, but he probably will never see again. And the screaming agony of pain that he is experiencing tells me that it hurt quite a lot. So we've got another person, but he's not dead. So what's the message? Now we get to see a brothel from this time period where one of Chester's friends, he's a military guy, and they're buddies, and he takes him and a couple other guys, one who is about to get married, to this brothel. And hang on. Okay, I wanted to make sure I got some of these actors' names and characters' names. So the friend that takes him to the brothel is played by Riley Dolman. His character's name is Marlon Harris. And they're at the place, and he immediately just, again, it's two white guys and two Japanese Americans. And I say two white guys and then two Japanese. But when he says that, "Hey guys, I got you a white man's discount," I was like, yeesh. But this is where we meet Yuko. And she had crossed paths with the gentleman. Okay, I don't want to just call him the husband. Hideo Furuya. His wife was the woman who died, and her name was Masayo Furuya. And she crossed his path right before he looked into the sun. And now she's in the brothel. Now, this is only news to, we notice it, but he's not going to notice it. But he notices her. And she's very primped out. And she's sitting down and looking at the mirror and she's making something, and he doesn't go with the other guys to go get laid. And she tells him after reading his tea, and she's off. Like, let's just say she's cute, she's nice, but there's something off about her right off the get-go. It's the performance, it's the look. It is creepy because we know that this, whatever she is not, I don't know. But she tells him in the tea leaves that he is two people, light and dark, life and death, living in two worlds, but home in neither. Okay, so a lot of that is just kind of vague bullshit. But I did like that he's living in two worlds, but he's got a home in neither. Like he wouldn't be accepted in Japan, and he's not accepted here as a Japanese person. And that's something that I think is probably the most important thing she said. But then she says that you need to restore your path or you will hunger for it forever. And that, again, is more kind of vague bullshit where you can take that and just, as any kind of like read the cards and show me the cards and I'm, some tarot or whatever, or just going to see a regular ass psychic or something where they say, what does this mean? Because, yeah, a lot of people know that they're on the wrong path and that the only way to fix things is to just do the hard thing to get yourself straight, because otherwise you tend, and I talk from experience on this, to dwell on it. So he takes it to go to Luz, his girl, and he's hoping that she hasn't taken the abortion medicine yet. And because he's there, he thinks that like this is his moment to like, I want to be a father, I can do all this, we can be together, we can do this and that. But she, even though she hasn't taken it and she's upset with the choice and she wants to just go through it and she wants to feel her pain and her sadness, she shoots him down. And basically tells him like, sorry man, but there's just nothing here. You need to go off and explore and I need to go do this. So even after all that, okay, so maybe though this isn't the path that he needs to set right, maybe Yuko was telling him something else, maybe something that he just is going to have to figure out as the show goes along. Ba-dum-bum-bum. Well, meanwhile, Stan now, after Chester goes and steals the car back for his father, Stan, now pissed off that he doesn't have this stolen car anymore, goes to torch Henry's boat, dumping gasoline on there, and I'm waiting for it, right? This is the moment. The guy's almost been killed once. You know he's marked for death, and I cheated and saw that he's only in one episode. I didn't mean to cheat. It just kind of was like, oh, one episode. Okay, I know what this guy's fate is. It's just going to be a matter of when and where. And he lights the matches, a whole book, and he's going to throw him on the boat, and a huge gust of wind comes up. He looks at something. He kind of gets this freaked out look at his face, and he's blown backwards. Now, the next day, they find this guy's body all up in their net of their boat. And so they've got to go to the police station and explain why the guy is there, that they didn't do anything. This guy, like, I don't even know if they should even mention that he was going to torch their boat. But it would be easily to say that the guy got fired, fell in the water, and got drunk and got caught up. Because he was drunk. He was there. And he probably fell in. And while they're going over their story and how it needs to be talked about, and they're having their own dramatic moment, in the middle of all this, the air raid sirens start going off. And it means war. It means Pearl Harbor has started. It means that Pearl Harbor has happened and America is on alert. But even though they've been detained for questioning, Chester's friend, Marlin, tells him to get the hell out of there because he knows that this was from the Japanese. He takes one look at them and realizes what they're in for if they don't get the hell out of there. And we hear on the TV, there was no warning, as you know that these people are going to start being rounded up, which is, it was a lie. It was a lie. Franklin Delano Roosevelt knew, and he didn't do anything because he knew we needed to be in the war. But to say that would mean, so he basically, as they say, the first casualty of war is the truth. So if he were to come clean about this, right, maybe they'd still find some excuse to do it, but it would look a hell of a lot worse to find out that, oh, maybe if you had done something about this, la la la. So we let a whole bunch of people get put in internment camps because one guy decided what was best for everyone, and this is one of the consequences. But Chester is making pictures again. He took a picture of Yuko in the brothel, and her face is blurry. At the same exact time, buses start showing up, loading people onto them, saying that it's for the FBI, and they're taking away people not born in the USA for questioning. And as he's leaving, his father tells him to show them that you're a patriot. Fight for this country. And it's just sad that even as he's being led away on a bus to who knows where to save his son, he's still trying to tell him this is the only way. You got to just be like them, but be invisible. Meanwhile, we finally crack at the very end. We cut to Yuko, or whoever it is, or whatever it is. And it made me think of that show V from back in the 80s where the lizards were wearing like people suits. Because part of like her flesh is coming off and you can see this like something blackish underneath, some kind of leathery looking skin underneath, and she's taking like fishing wire hooks and stuff to like sew her face back up and put makeup on to cover up that this whatever form she's taking is falling apart. And this is our monster, or at least one of them. So that's the Terror Infamy episode 1. And the whole thing with the sparrow in a swallow's nest, she was talking to Chester about that. That, you know, you're among them right now. You're in the nest. But as soon as they realize you're not one of them, they are going to fucking peck you out. So I know that these first episodes tend to be long when you're setting things up and putting out cast and talking about the plot a lot and what that brings up. Usually makes these videos a lot longer than my usual ones, but hey, them's the breaks, folks. If you like it, that means you got extra content. If you don't, you had a lot to skip through. So anyway, that's episode 1. I'm going to put this all together, see how it feels when it comes out, and you'll either see it or you won't. If you're seeing it, then I liked what I was putting out. Or maybe I just felt like, you know, hey, this is good enough. And I'll get better as further episodes go along. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And I can't wait to talk more about this show on the next video. Have a good one. Bye.